What's going on? Welcome back to the Whole Field of Battle. This is going to be the last episode in the first season. So if you haven't, you might want to go back and review some of the previous episodes that we've talked about Strauss and Howe theory. We've talked about the fourth turning. We've talked about our place in our current cultural climate, where we are in the world and what that feels like, and maybe even a little bit of how to navigate some of it together. So as we begin this last in this season, probably the last where we will explicitly sort of be talking about the fourth turning theory, I want to start out by comparing two movies that I suspect many of us are going to be familiar with. The first is Castaway. Remember Tom Hanks, the FedEx guy, and he is, stranded on a deserted island for years. And remember how he gets so lonely that he talks to his volleyball, right? Wilson has extended conversations with him. Castaway represents sort of the quintessential man all alone, and he has to figure it out. And in the movie, because, we like happy endings, in the movie, he does figure it out, but it costs him everything. Truly, it does cost him everything. All of his physical energy, all of his strength, being gone cost him his marriage. It took everything from him in order to survive, but he survives on his own. The other movie is The Martian. You might have seen that. It's based on a book. The potato farmer, right? The potato farmer in outer space. That's what that's about, where he grows potatoes so he can eat. He is all alone. He is the only human being on planet Mars. And so at first glance you think, well, that's like Castaway. But the main difference between the two, not so much one's in outer space and one is on a deserted island in, I think, the Pacific. That's not so much the difference. The difference is that the guy in The Martian, Mark Watney, that was his name, Mark Watney, played by Matt Damon, he has a team. They're not with him, but he has a team of people that he's in communication with, back on Earth, and NASA people, as well as the team that he had been on Mars with. And I'm not going to spoil all of it, but he couldn't get out. He couldn't survive without his team. See, Chuck Nolan, the guy in Tom Hanks, the Castaway version, he's the solo hero, right? You can do it all yourself. He's untethered. He is disconnected from all of humanity, and he reaches inside himself to find the strength and the courage and the ingenuity and the ability to survive. But Mark Watney, The Martian, Matt Damon, he cannot do it alone. He is alone, but he's not doing it alone. He needs others to survive. The point of all of that is, in our culture, in Western civilization, the last 40 to 50, maybe even 60 years, one could argue, we have been trying to be the guy on the deserted island. We have wanted to be untethered. We have cut all the chains and the strings that connect us to one another. We have gotten what we wanted. How many of us even really know our neighbors? We are exactly Chuck Nolan. We are Tom Hanks in The Castaway. We are alone, and we have to rely on our own abilities and our own strengths and our own ingenuity in order to survive. But if Strauss and Howe are right, and frankly, I think even if they're not, there is a change happening in the world. Everyone is talking about it, whether it's Strauss and Howe or another model maybe we'll approach. Something is happening here, and the storm is coming. And it is no longer a time where one can survive being alone. We can't make it out of the desert island on our own. We need a team. We need the people around us. That's what we're going to be talking about here, is how to build a team and why we should stop trying to be alone. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you on the other side of the turn. It's so easy to get lost in the noise, to be consumed by the outrage, the anger, and the constant hum of fear. But if you look past the chaos, you find a landscape of raw mechanics and hard truths, the things that don't change, even when everything else is on fire. I'm Jared Lee. I don't focus on the friction of the moment. I'm looking at the wider ground that makes the struggle inevitable. This is the whole field of battle. Thanks a lot. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're back. Listen, so if you think about just recent history, think back to the 50s, right? I know for a fact that you could get a mortgage on a handshake and a promise in the 50s, 60s. Now, here's the thing. That culture, right? I grew up in a small town. All your neighbors knew what you were doing. Of course you could get a mortgage with a handshake because the banker lived next door and he was watching what you were doing and where you were putting your money, right? We all knew, and people were all up in each other's lives, for lack of a better way to put it. No one liked that. But that's the culture that we had, in a culture where people knew one another. People depended on one another. People were indeed all up in each other's business. Now that obviously feels like shackles. It feels like you have to conform. You have to behave a certain way in order to, quote unquote, fit into that reality. People have certain expectations, and if you in the 1950s, when you could get a loan for a handshake, if you were to walk out of your front door with, say you dyed your hair blue, people would not appreciate that, and you probably would have been publicly shamed in that era for expressing your own individuality. And so we have successfully, I would say, untethered ourselves from those networks. We've ripped down any guardrails that were imposed by community standards. Who here really depends on their neighbors for anything? We might have friends on social media or places like that where we connect with people. And maybe we've connected there. Maybe we have a couple of places, affinity groups. I know a lot of people meet for, a D&D night once a week, and those are your people. Or, I used to host trivia events in bars in town I used to live in. And in those kinds of events, I often found that people found their people, and that's where they went to find people that they could know and build relationships with and connect with. I mean, sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes you can find a church where your people are in your church. I think that is an ideal, and it should happen. I think churches are an ideal place for people to connect with the people that they can count on. But neighborhoods aren't like that at all anymore. When I was a kid in the 80s, we moved into a new neighborhood, and several neighbors, they bring a pie over, they bring dinner. They don't know you. You're the guy there. You're some guy they've never seen before with a moving truck in the front yard. And here come neighbors carrying fried chicken and apple pie over to the house to say, hi, here's food, and here's who I am. And the connection that existed in that kind of lived reality truly doesn't exist anymore. We've talked about this before, I think, on this podcast. I won't open my front door to somebody that I don't know, and I'm not trying to pretend I'm better than anybody else or that I'm not playing into this exact same thing that I'm currently describing. Okay, I'm a part of it. I think we all are. But would you open your front door to somebody you don't know? What are they selling, right? This is unsafe. So we have torn down the connectivity that we used to have because we wanted individualism and our own ability to express ourselves. We didn't want the restrictions, the cultural and social handcuffs that come with that kind of connection. We didn't want that. We want to be our own person, and we want to be Chuck Nolan, Tom Hanks in The Castaway, right? That's what we're after. That's what we're going for. And so, all of that said, we've done it. We have successfully, at this point in history, 2026, we have successfully disengaged ourselves from those kinds of things. Robert Putnam talked about this in Bowling Alone. In his book, he talks about bowling leagues and how we used to have bowling leagues and now we're all alone bowling. That's sort of the idea. But since the 1970s, there has been a 50% drop. For every 100 people, now there's 50 people. So for every 10, now there's 5. A 50% drop in local group participation. Things like the Lions Club. It's a local club, local group, right? Lions, Kiwanis, Rotary, all of the things that if you are probably my age or younger, you're either probably like, ugh, or who? Is my guess when you hear names like that. These are places where people used to go and connect, often for community service. Sometimes these groups started, sometimes parks, community parks, and they funded local community initiatives. Sometimes they did things to make the world better. People in the neighborhood, people in the community coming together for a purpose of making the community a better place. That's kind of what a lot of these things were. PTA, Parent-Teacher Association. My kids are, almost done with high school now, and I cannot remember being excited about PTA ever. In fact, I can't remember strongly participating in them. I wanted to get to know the teachers, wanted to connect with teachers, but I didn't. PTA just felt like a burden. This is a group that initially, think about institutional decay for a minute. We've talked about that in a previous episode too. This is a group that initially existed to hold up the schools, for parents and teachers to come together and find a way to improve the educational environment of the students. Sounds like a great thing, doesn't it? But if you've been in one of those groups, you know that probably, there's somebody there trying to make a name. There's somebody that's just going to have it their way, whether it's for the good of the school or not. What you really need to have is X or Y or Z, and I know all the answers, and what I really want is for everybody to listen to me. And it stopped being about the mission, and it started being about the people in it, maybe, or even just we've got to keep this organization, the PTA, running, even though it doesn't truly do much. You've heard that before. If you've been listening to this podcast, that is institutional decay in action. 50% decline in community involvement in any of those things since the 70s. We are half as active in trying to come together to make our communities and our world better than we were in the 1970s. Because we're all Chuck Nolan. We all want to do this on our own. We don't need other people, right? We have our pet project, and you're not going to do it the way I'll do it. And so all of these things have combined to create an environment where we are all on our own deserted islands, depending solely on ourselves. Right now, for the first time in American history, not just in this turning since the 45-ish beginning of what Strauss and how to define as this current cycle, for the first time in American history, less than half of all U.S. households are married. Less than half. So the majority of households in America are not two people trying to make it work together, right? The majority are either single or maybe some roommate situation things, right? Because we're all alone now. This, by the way, statistically, this makes it's more expensive on every individual. It costs more. Look at what being alone on the island cost Chuck Nolan. I mean, for a while, his sanity. It cost him a tooth. It cost him, I don't know what, 180 pounds he probably lost. I don't know. It's very expensive to do a life all by yourself, financially, emotionally, psychologically, mentally, all of it. It takes more to make it work when you're all alone. So it's more expensive. It's also less resilient. You know, that's the one of the great things about marriage is generally when one person is not doing well, another person is. Now, sometimes we have, we vary. If you're just listening, you can't see what I just did with my hands. Sometimes one of us is up and one is down. Sometimes one of us is a little up and one of us is a little down. And sometimes we're both really struggling. But generally speaking, there's a built-in resiliency. We can do this together better than we can do it alone. I mean, didn't Abraham Lincoln say something like that? Isn't that the way humanity is wired to work? Isn't that what we should be doing? Is connecting and learning to do it together. But we want the freedom. We wanted individuality. We wanted to be able to express ourselves without being shamed. We wanted to be able to do it our way without being told we have to compromise. And all of what that's done is bankrupted us. It's destroyed our souls, I think. I think it's destroyed our community. And I would argue it's destroyed really our society. What we've done in a way is we've traded what we could call horizontal trust, right? We could trust our peers, the people who are like us. We've traded that in for what we might call vertical trust. Horizontal trust, we trust our neighbors, our coworkers, the people at church with us. We trust people who are like us. Vertical trust, we trust institutions. We trust the organizations. We traded, right? Let's say in the 50s, somebody lost their job and they were looking for another one, and they were going to be out of work for a little bit, and they were, but they were a trustworthy person, and people knew them. Everybody in their community knew who they were. They knew their work ethic. They knew they could be counted on, but they were in a hard spot. Who did they lean on? They ran a credit at the local market. They had a little piece of paper and they write down when you bought something. They say, okay, we got your tab right here. Have a good day, and they would run that. And people around them, maybe the dentist in the town would, oh, don't worry about it this week, Bob. I know you're having a tough time. They took care of each other. And of course, I mean, you think back. I know. Okay, hang on. Let me just pause because I know that some of you are thinking, oh my gosh, you're just such an old fogey. Like, oh, you're just dreaming of the better days when things were, quote unquote, so good. No. Please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not even saying that things were so good in the 1950s. I mean, they weren't, right? Things have their issues. There were other issues that we could address all day long. And I'm not even saying that was good. I'm saying it was horizontal trust. You trusted the butcher and the baker and the candlestick maker, and they were in your community, and they knew you, and those were the people that you depended on. Let's say you lose your job today. Who do you depend on? You depend on the bank. Oh, I know it's going to be tough, but we're going to have to put that on the credit card, and we'll pay it off when I get that next job. Or it's going to be a tight season. We're going to have to, quote unquote, batten down the hatches, and we're going to have to live a little less, less milk and eggs. I don't know, and it's going to be hard, but we can put what we have to put on the credit card, or maybe we'll take a home equity loan to kind of get us over this bump. We're depending. See, we still have to do it, but who are we trusting, and who do we look to get us through that season? We look up. We look vertically. We look at the institutions, the organizations, and the lenders who are going to be there with their hand out when things change for us. See, we thought we were gaining independence because we don't need to go to our neighbor. We thought we were gaining freedom and individuality because we don't need to depend on one another. We can just use a credit card. But are you somehow more free that way? I would say you're not. You have a greater maybe illusion of freedom, at least in the short run, at least until the bills start coming in the mail. You have a illusion that you're free, but you're not any more free in that scenario either. You've shackled yourself to a larger mega global corporation that's coming for you just as quick as they can. And that has cost us. See, I think as human creatures, we are biologically wired for the horizontal web of networks. We are built for that. Some people, evolutionary biologists, would make that same claim. Neurobiology makes that claim, and from my perspective, theology makes that very same claim. I mean, the first problem that we read about in the Bible is it is not good for man to be alone. That we need connection, we need community, and there's a lot in that narrative that demonstrates that we need each other, that we are not made to be alone. But when we move into sort of the vertical space, when we take and sever the horizontal relationships, which is what we've done for the most part in our society. We have severed many of our horizontal relationships and we've built vertical ones. What we've done is we become less communal, right? You can't look the bank in the eye and say, listen to me, brother, I will pay you next Tuesday, right? Again, I know that there are problems in both. Which problems are going to feed what we were made to feed, which is connection and dependence on each other, and which one is going to feed a multinational global corporation. That's where we are. Currently, American credit card debt is at $1.13 trillion. Do you call that freedom? Do you think Americans have finally found their freedom? Or are we just owned by some other company? I think you could argue, I think there's greater freedom in being connected to one another and not connected to the mega multinational corporations that we owe our souls to at this point. So think about this. Do you think we are born as sort of blank slates for the universe to impose order on? Are we sort of, do we come out of the womb as a blank film that then gets a long exposure, right, over, you've seen the pictures that are taken where you see the track of the sun in the sky over the course of a year. It usually looks like an infinity symbol, which is really cool, I think. But, it's a long exposure. So are we a blank slate that just comes out for the universe to impose sort of everything on us? Or do we come out more like a old flash drive, right, with an operating system imprinted on it? You bought a computer and it didn't have, you had to install the operating system, and I had a little CD that I could install the operating system. Of course, you had the license, you had to put the code in, but you had the disk was the operating system. And I think we are born not as a blank film, but as a pre-installed operating system, that we are optimized, that we are designed, we are built for survival, for tribalism, for connection, for for self-preservation among our peeps, right? Honestly, this is why we see when you zoom into the sort of the on-the-ground battles that are happening in our culture about all the little things, and usually it's political, right? Everything is currently in our particular climate. It's hard to make a claim to anything without someone trying to tattoo an R or a D on your forehead. And why is that? Because we need to know who our people are. This is why racism exists. This operating system, it says we need to identify our people, we need connection, and we need safety. That's a part of our base operating system. It's pre-installed. And then we're born into this world, and we're born into a world where racism is real. And we are told, often, not always, hopefully, less and less as the decades and centuries go by, but for a long time, certainly in the American cultural experiment that we've had, a person was born with that base operating system. Self-preservation, my people, right? I need to be safe. And these things come out, and then what's put into what's laid on top of that operating system is racism sometimes, right? That's laid on top, and it fits. You can see how that fits. These are our people. These are not your people. I'm not saying it ought to be that way. Don't go say Jared's a fan of racism. Good gosh, no. I'm just saying it fits that basic architecture of the operating system, that we need to be safe. And part of the way we are safe is by identifying our people. Doesn't have to be about racism, but we do have to have a people. We're built for it. We have to. In fact, evolutionary biologists have identified that we need about 250 people in our social circle. And those 250 people are the people that we care about, that we invest in, that we protect, and who then will also protect us. 250. That is about the range of the network of relationships that a human being has that they invest in. And that, again, evolutionary biologists argue that that's all a part of the tribalism from, coming out of the jungle and sort of forming tribal groups and nomadic groups that traveled around and protected each other, and they were about that size, and they got imprinted on us. I think it also has to do with what we can actually handle. We can't physically handle a network of relationships, the 3,000 people, but we can physically handle a web of relationships of somewhere in the area of 250. About how many would you say are in your rough network of connection, of people that you can count on? People who, if your house was on fire, you could call and say, hey, look, I got nowhere to go tonight. Can you help me? How many people are in that network for you? I'll tell you what I think. Well, I don't have to think this. I know this. I've seen the statistics. That number is drastically and rapidly diminishing for most Americans. Most of us might be able to name 10. I don't think that's good for us because we're made for that horizontal. Part of our safety, part of our survival, part of our connectivity and our ability to continue is having that network. And here's the problem, and this is the real problem with what we've done by severing all of those horizontal relationships. Listen, we are wired for a setting. This is in our operating system. This is the core of how we're made. Our setting is supposed to be us first. Do you hear me? That's so important that you hear me say that. It's supposed to be us first. Now, again, this gets abused deeply. This is why the R&D thing is always fighting each other. It's us versus them, right? But here's the problem. What we've done by severing those horizontal relationships is we've actually flipped it, and it's, listen, it's me over us. We've put the individual first. We have said the individual The individual has to have complete freedom to do whatever they want, even if it's at the expense of the community. That is a core value of the modern Western world. The individual has to have absolute, total freedom to do whatever they want, even if it costs the community. This is essentially a slow motion suicide pact. It is our way of agreeing to kill ourselves because we're not made for that. That's not a part of the operating system. We cannot handle the weight of living on the deserted island all by ourselves. We need the team. There were times in The Martian where Matt Damon didn't think that his team was right. He's alone. And he knows he's on the planet. He's the one who can see the on-the-ground reality. And they're saying, no, we can see the satellite view, and we're telling you you need to do this, not that. And he had to say no. He had to say no to himself. He had to say, I'll listen to my team. And it's the only reason he survived. Oops, I just spoiled it. That's okay. It's an old movie. You should have watched it already anyway. You see, we kill ourselves, not only individually, but we kill ourselves as a community and as a society when we decide me matters more than us. But this is what we live in. The whole world is managed now by people you don't know, who will never know your name unless you really get charged with a serious crime. They're never going to hear your name, most of us, right? We can't shake people's hands. We can't see people face to face, and they're running. They're running and dictating the way we live our lives. And what we get in the trade is we get to do whatever we want to, just so long as we pay our bills, right? That is sort of top down, right? Call it a distant center, right? The center shall not hold. That's what I'm going to say. The center will not hold, but it's the center that we're all cycling around. Okay, so here let's game this out for a minute. We're in a fourth turning. It's the winter season of this era that we are in, and probably headed for some sort of climactic event. That's the Strauss-Howe theory. Something's coming that inverts, that really upsets the social order, so much so that new social orders need to be established in the wake of it. That's the theory. Something so bad, so tragic, so even potentially dehumanizing, that out of that we say we've got to do something different. I think we have two alternatives. Alternative one, we give away our freedom so that we can have our individuality. That's one option. Sure, you can do whatever you want. There's no social norms. There's no expectations from neighbors and community, but some big organization, some leader in, I don't know, the White House, somewhere far off, somebody else is going to decide what rights and privileges you actually have. But, you just don't get in the way, and we'll let you live your life. Now that you can have your individualism, you just don't get your freedom. That's one scenario. The other scenario is you have your freedom and you might lose your individuality because you are now a part of a group. Look at The Walking Dead just for a minute. There's not a whole lot of individuality, right? You don't get to sort of play the trumpet while you're walking down the road because the whole group depends on you being quiet while you walk down the road because the walkers are coming to get you, right? Like you are living now, part of your existence, part of your purpose is for the group. It's not just about you anymore. These, I think, are the the choices that we need to make. And one of the things that I've often said is, freedom comes with great responsibility. And that's exactly what I'm saying. We have a great responsibility to our neighbors, to our community, to our 250. We are responsible to serve, to give, to protect, to shelter, to provide for sort of our people, for our 250, whatever that is, whoever that is, wherever that is. We have a responsibility to those people. And if we maintain that core, then within that we have freedom. Freedom, not necessarily individuality. We still are a part of this group. And I think that there's something there. We call that bottom up, right? The top down is the guy off in D.C. or the organization or the bank or the corporation that runs the world or whatever that looks like, that says, sure, you can do what you want, just, no, you can't do this and you can't do that. But you can be an individual, right? I don't think we're going to like that world. The other is bottom up. It's what you could call the mesh network. It's like a spider web of people connected to other people. It's built on the handshake, not the contract. It's built on trust. It's built on mutual trust. It's eyeball to eyeball, hand to hand. It's even heart to heart, shoulder to shoulder. We work together for this purpose. It might feel like friction. It might feel hard. Have you ever had a conversation with your neighbor? Sorry, neighbors. But sometimes that's a challenge, isn't it? Especially, if you're not sure exactly where that line is and they don't like the way you cut grass. That can be hard. Or, you want to paint your house, but you got to put the scaffolding on their yard to get there. And you're going to kill some spots because it's going to sit there, because it's going to take you a while to scrape the paint. Can you tell that I've done this before? And you have hard conversations, and that feels like friction. Nobody likes that. Wouldn't it be better to just kind of close the door and never speak to them again? No. See, that's messy. It's hard. It's slow. It's tedious, and sometimes it even takes something I'm going to call compromise. We have to work to figure out how to do this together. Here's the thing about that. In a crisis moment, when the rubber hits the road, as they say, when the wheels fall off, to mix metaphors, when things get really hard, that system, that connection, that network, that spider web, that mesh that we build when we connect with one another, it's indestructible. You can't beat it. You can't run through it. The top down, the depending on some far off dictator to tell us and provide for us, and here I'll take care of you because you can't do it for yourself. Like that's one possible direction of where we go from here. That is not very safe. That can go dark. I mean, the power goes out, right? We lose connection with it. What are we going to do then? But if we've got a mesh, if we've got people around us that we can rely on, that's strong. There's strength to it. That's the only way to be safe. Even if the top down becomes a dictator, if we have a community, we can outlast it. Community outlasts a whole lot of distance center BS that happens, right? True liberty, true freedom isn't doing whatever you want to do. That's a good way to die a slow death. It's doing what you were built to do. Do you hear that? Real freedom, real liberty is not just do whatever you want, which is where we've come to, where much of our society believes. I would say that is slowly killing us as individuals and as a communal group, I think. And the stats bear it out. Like all of everything that's been said about this stuff for the last 40 years is coming to demonstrate do whatever you want is killing not only people, but society as a whole. But do what you were made to do. There's freedom in that. That gives life. That gives encouragement. That gives you go to bed, you lay your head down at night, and you feel good about yourself. That's the opposite. Wouldn't that be great? So, how do we do it? How do we get there from where we are? Well, I would say a couple of things. Just some thoughts. Identify your people. Number one, identify. Who are your people, right? Maybe you're already connected to a group. Maybe it is your D&D club, or hopefully I'd love it if you'd said, no, it's my church. That's my people. Those are my people where I feel safe. Identify those people. Identify who those people are. If you are all alone in your house and you're listening to this and you don't have many networks, then I want you to look out your window, okay? Honestly, maybe it's the two houses closest to yours. That's okay. Wherever your people are, learn the names. If you're in a church of 250 and you know 15 of them, then on Sunday, I want you to go to find 3 people you don't know and introduce yourself. Like, just learn the names. Get to know people. Take somebody to lunch even. Really connect. Get to know. That's your people. Identify that group and get to know who they are. Like I said, maybe it's your neighborhood. Maybe it's your D&D club. Know who they are. That's number one. Number two, grow it. Try to expand to around 250 people in a network. You don't have to have intimate connections with all 250, but you should be able to say that person has these 10 and I got these 10 and we've got each other. So that's 22 right there, right? And be able to do that so that you have a network. Another thing you could do is, for instance, and let's say the power does go out. Let's say the economy really does plummet. Okay, just as a possibility. This is wise, I think, even in a neighborhood. If everything is good, with as expensive as stuff is, build a tool registry, right? Like, I don't have a chainsaw, but I know who does, and I can borrow it. I don't think I need to buy a chainsaw. I'm okay with that. I don't need a chainsaw. Now, there's been times in my life, and probably times in yours as well, when you thought, I know my neighbor has a chainsaw, but I feel bad borrowing it. Well, it's sitting in his garage most of the time, right? Or let's flip that on its head, but I want my own. I've done both of those things, right? I've thought, I don't want to borrow his constantly. I feel like it's an imposition. And I've done, but I want one for me. I like it. I want it to be mine, my precious, my only, right? But in both of those scenarios, we are drifting into individualism, right? Mine, yours, and mine. What if we just had a registry and said, hey, are you willing to lend out some stuff? And are you willing to, lend your stuff? And can we have a list of, well, I've got a chainsaw, but you've got a, weed whacker or whatever, and be willing to trade. That might be just one great way to do it. Maybe somebody in your neighborhood raises chickens, and maybe they're willing to sell some eggs. I mean, that'd probably be cheaper than what a grocery store's charging for them. Do that, okay? Build the network. Identify the network. Develop the network. What can you do? Maybe it's not tools. Maybe it's plumbing. I'm a plumber. I'm not. I'm not a plumber. Don't call me and ask for plumbing. My wife will tell you not to. But what skills do you have that you can offer to the community? Let's put that on the registry too. Find the things that we can offer to one another to be able to help the whole, right? That's us serving our people. That's what that looks like. Agree on this. That's number one. Identify your people. Number two, identify skills, tasks, possessions that can be shared among the group. Number three, agree that we are together. We're not going to betray each other. We're going to show up, right? You got a leak, I'm coming to your house. Like, agree to put as much as possible to put the group above the self. If my neighbor calls and says, hey, my sink is leaking, and I'm sitting there binge watching something on Netflix, and I go, oh, dude, I wish I could, but I can't right now. Am I truly being a good neighbor? And listen, I might be inclined to do that. I'm not answering the phone because I got a Netflix going or whatever, right? But is that, do you see, am I fighting for the bottom up, or am I succumbing to the top down? Am I fighting for my network and my people, or am I giving up and letting the big dogs tell me how to live my life? That's where we are, right? We have to make this decision, I really believe. And again, whether Strauss and Howe are right, whether a climactic event comes, whether the dollar plummets in value, whether we enter into, some kind of economic nightmare scenario that none of us can imagine or not, I truly don't think that the top-down model that we're living off of is sustainable. I don't believe that the institutions that were built in the 50s, in the last high, are sufficient to sustain the life that we have now. And I don't think they are long for this world. Many of those institutions are going to have a massive overhaul. I do think there's something that's going to change over the next 5 years or so. And I think as it changes, you and I, the people on the ground, the people who are trying to live out lives, discover our full humanity, live as good as we possibly can live, we have to decide in whatever the future looks like, the next 5, 6, 7 years, in 10 years, do we want to be people who are fully and completely in servitude to faraway, distant authorities, financial, political, whatever? Or do we want to be people who are dependent on our local networks, on the people who we can look in the eye, on the people whose hands we can shake, on the people whose babies we can hold in our arms? I think there is beauty and goodness and life in finding our people and connecting to our people and sacrificing even ourselves, our desires, our interests, our individuality even, when necessary, for the sake of our people, for that group. For me, that's the church. And I've got others not in my church who I consider to be a part of my people. But in general, I'd say find a place. Find a place and a people that you can give yourself to. And I think that will make you feel like you're doing what you are built to do, or at least a little bit more than doing whatever you want to do. Because I don't think, I know, I don't have to say I think, because again, I've seen the data on it. Doing what we want to do is slowly killing all of us. So we have to find the ways to do what we need to do for others, and realize that that's actually a good thing for us. That's where we are going to wrap this season up, in finding your people and committing your life to them. Whatever may happen, I think Strauss-Howe have an interesting perspective. I think there may be some truth, some elements of truth. I don't know how big it goes. I don't know how deep that rabbit hole is going to get, but I'm excited in a way about seeing what the changes in the culture look like over the next several years. And I will be watching with great interest what the world looks like. I hope you'll join me. I am planning on doing a season 2 at some point, coming months maybe, where we will look at other sort of macro perspectives. That is what the whole field of battle means. We look at what's going on in the world, and from our perspectives, and the little skirmishes that happen on a battlefield. But we're going to zoom out and look big picture, because that's what I am wired to do. I see the world from a big picture perspective, and I want to help us sort of see the big view on things. So in light of that, I'm also, of course, if you don't know or don't follow me there, I write on Substack about a variety of things. So I'd love it if you connect with me there. It's just jaredmlee.substack.com. I'll put that link in in the show notes and stuff. But I would love to connect with you. The two things that I have thought about maybe doing sort of mid-season, and I would let you know there. And in fact, if you go to Substack, go to this post, go to my Find My Podcast and comment on the podcast episodes there. I would love to do a Q&A episode, but you got to ask some questions. So I know I've been in touch with email with some of you, and that's fine. You can email me. But I would love to do a Q&A episode. Ask me any questions about Strauss-Howe, about my perspective on this, which is not a carbon copy of Strauss-Howe. If I've made it sound that way, then, well, I guess I'm doing a good job, because I wanted to fairly sort of represent what they have to say, but yet demonstrate some nuance and some ways that we might be able to live in light of that, which is what I hope I've done. And so I'd love to hear your questions and thoughts. So if you just want to drop me a comment there, that'd be awesome. I'd appreciate being in touch with you. And yeah, I might do a Q&A episode if I get enough of those to make up an episode. I also thought I might do an episode on leading an organization through a fourth turning, something I have been thinking a lot about. So I might do that in the off season as well. I don't know. But if you don't already, make sure you subscribe to wherever you're listening to this podcast. And also, I would say go over to my Substack and subscribe. I think you'd find a lot of stuff I say over there interesting as well. There's a lot of things that I address, but I would love to be in touch with you. If you've enjoyed this material, I would love to connect with you, find out what other kinds of things you enjoy, and maybe dig into it a little deeper or zoom out of it a lot farther and take a big, wide picture view. In the meantime, I hope you find your people, and I hope you work to find your people, and I hope you commit to serve your people. And I think the world, whatever it looks like tomorrow, for you and I, could look a whole lot better. Anyway, reach out if you have any questions. Thanks a lot for listening. Have a terrific day and a great week.